5
We should be
seconds.
reading these too.
Yeah, what's that?
We're reading these also.
Yeah, yeah.
No, we gave a score.
So abstract 1 you got, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
okay.
Just want to read it and do your analysis.
I edge out there, there's a large number of difference to say. Just again, print it.
And you get 2 minutes on each one. Number 2.
So just keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to go through all 5, then we go into discussion.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Switch.
Third abstract.
Oh, no, different.
Okey dokey.
Okay, all right. So I'm still moderating, right?
Yes.
Okay. You want to start sharing with your score?
Do I go through all
Yeah,
five of them?
No, just
Oh, no,
the
no,
first one.
first one.
Oh, the
Yep.
first one.
You get 3 minutes on each abstract.
Okay, I gave a 4.
I did the same action.
4.
I gave a 4 too.
I gave it a 3. So I gave the lowest one, you all gave the same. Why did you guys give the 4s?
Well, in my case, I think this is a very much the AAA structure. It does have a potential to be a butt in there, but it didn't really flesh out. And it definitely there is not a therefore. So I have not seen a therefore. So I just gave it a 4. So less than half.
Well, yeah, there's some progression in the paragraph, but it didn't go all the way to ABG, so it was a little opaque.
So I originally gave it a 2, maybe a 3, but then I was just rereading it before we we changed. And I'm wondering if it actually is better than it seems, because it's not an obvious structure. So I don't know, I want to reread it again.
It actually made more sense, like after I read the other abstracts, I went back to it as
Right.
well, and I
Yeah.
thought, oh, actually, this one has a little bit more progression than I thought.
Yeah, because it starts with a kind of a general,
Mhm.
here's the situation. So to address this problem, we did this
Mhm.
and that. And then comes up with sort of a conclusion, but I feel
Yeah.
like it's too brief to really.
Right, and the vocabulary is so inaccessible
Right.
that it's hard to even see there's a good structure because it's like,
Yeah.
So one thing to think about in moderating for each of these things is along the lines of problem solution. So first off, you're figuring out the problems, and then maybe if you've got time, talk about solutions. What would we do to fix this thing and make it better?
Okay. All right, well, so how will we fix it?
I think you would have to open up the vocabulary a little bit, like this, because if you're not speaking to scientists, like this, to me, this is biologists talking to each other, I guess, maybe biology, right? Chemists, maybe.
But language aside, I'm still not clear
Okay.
exactly what they're trying to do. In other words, you know these mammalian systems recognize odors by certain molecule, but they also did gene engineering to let them figure out more odor receptors, in other words, but they don't know, I mean, I don't know what's the
Okay,
purpose.
and B, just stop right where you are and move on to number 2.
Number 2, okay, I still start?
So,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, actually, I gave a 8.
I did a 4 or something.
I gave it a 5.
I give it a 5 also.
I have to-
And by the way, keep the same sequence, go straight through the 4 of you each time, because somebody later is going to be transcribing these, so.
Okay. So Sharon, you gave it the highest score?
Yeah, I think because I gave the highest score, it does have all the elements of ABT, but it doesn't organize effectively to flesh it out. Because I did find ABT all in here.
Where?
The problem is, there is, it should have started as theoretical works, usually on these blah, 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 but it never really done these things. So we commenced an, experiment to do this to address that question. So I think it has all these elements. It's just organized in a kind of backwards way, so it confuses people. Actually, I gave it a DHY in this one. I think it does have over and arrogate a little bit.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Yeah,
I
it's
said that before
DHY,
because
right?
I thought the sequencing was a little confusing and sort of didn't follow the normal path, and then it was more heavily DHY.
Yeah.
To sort of wrap your head around what the.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It seemed to me that they started with the but and moved to therefore, but never really got there. And it was a lot of description. Well, we're going to review this, we review that, we commence in this way, but never really pulled it all together.
Yeah, you're right, because I said here, because they started with but. I found it therefore somewhere in here, but there's over-narration to really confuses people.
Yeah, I didn't really feel like it followed the structure.
Right, yeah, I agree. And I found the same things. You did the DHY was high, which I think confused, even if there was an ABT, it was in the kind of the wrong order and it confused the issue.
Time to look at the table?
So we should wait until it,
Well, we can keep talking,
Keep
right?
talking.
Or just keep talking.
Yep, talk about the weather.
I just see more potential in this. If you just reshuffle it and then organize it better, I think you have a potential to be.
Would you move particular sentences, Sharon, to like different, like, would you actually take this and reshuffle it, or would you be editing it to add different words and?
I think it just needs to be reshuffled and it's cleaned it up. There was too many things.
Score, Sharon?
Abstract is 3. I have a 2.
3.
Well, we need you to say yours.
Oh, I go second?
Yeah.
I go third, okay. I remember what I did the first time. I gave it a 1.
Okay, for some reason I gave that one a 6. I don't know why.
Okay.
I mean, I do know why, but,
So you two, I have the lowest and the highest, right?
Yeah. So it seems, we're talking about number 3, right?
Yeah.
It seems.
Are we on the same page?
5. I think maybe I got caught up in the language, but it seemed very procedural to me that we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this.
You know what, I think, yes, that's true, and it, I think, appealed to my lawyerly setting up of facts. This makes complete sense and it all follows in order. This is, I mean, not awesome, but I was like, this is clearly better than it. Sorry, it's exactly what it was. Like, we saw the same thing, but you were like, this is really bad, and I'm like, this is great, we can make a legal argument.
Yeah, so it just there was no and, but.
There's no but.
It was just, it was just
Actually, I said,
and.
it never get to but, that's what I said.
That's very funny. You're the first lawyer we've had in the story. One of the things that happens a lot is that somebody who works on this subject thinks this is great because they know all the terminology and they instantly get it, and then everybody else is lost.
Well, no, but there was a progression between like this sentence one, and then you add more information which describes sentence one, and then sentence three adds to that. I'm like, this is
Sums it all up.
Right, all you need is the conclusion that says, oh, you answer. I'm like,
So you gave it a 2, Sharon.
Yeah, so I never get to a but, and then definitely there is no therefore, so it's just basically straight A,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
fine.
I mean, even though it's a good A, but it
Right.
didn't get to the B.
and I noted AAA.
Yeah, so he, she liked it, she still liked it.
I mean, like every sentence went to the sentence before it. Like years of training. I'm like, this is
There's a little bit of a therefore there at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
And I feel like with all of them, it's like, I read it the first time and had a gut reaction, and then would read it again and be like, well, like,
And that was the same thing.
I said there is maybe important factor, that's true.
Yeah.
There's a little bit.
There's a thus, which is technically a therefore.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, this is really interesting, your lawyer perspective, because, you know, what we're wanting these things to do is to convince us why this is important research. And you're sort of starting with the assumption that it's important and that you're not holding that criteria up as much. Whereas that's the whole idea of the, you know, it's laying out that question that kind of gives us the idea of what's different about this and why it needs to be done. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
Move on, let's move on.
Yeah, move on, exactly.
Wait a minute.
Well, we can talk about it later.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Number
The
4.
next one is a 10.
10.
I gave it a 9.
I gave it an 8, but yeah.
So
Am I actually?
why 8 and why 10?
Okay, why 10? I think this is really perfect ABT structure. You understand the A's, which is this woman's overwork that his husband bring it home. The but is his husband left, and then therefore she has to reevaluate her life. It's really simple and beautifully written, so I think it's 10.
I agree that it had a perfect ABT structure.
Why did you put an 8?
I've seen better writing.
Well, this
Fair
is,
enough.
this is why I sort of gave it a 9, because I thought, well, it's not. It's fine. It does follow the structure, absolutely, I agree. But, you know, they could have done more, like,
There could be more to it.
there could be more to it.
But it is proper.
Yeah.
I think I'd give it a 10 because it was a 10 in terms of.
Because
Yeah.
the assignment was the
Not
18,
in terms
yeah.
of-
Yeah. You can see
Whether
the
it was
difference
interesting
between
or-
humanity training and a scientific.
That's right, it had all
The
the
criteria.
Pretty much.
Oh, you are.
Psychologists
Oh, I
and
didn't know that.
finance.
Oh, okay.
That's hilarious.
So for scientists, this is as good a writing
As it gets.
Analytically.
Yeah, I was thinking if I was grading papers, I would give it, you know, you're not gonna get a full score, but you did pretty well.
Right,
You're tough.
there could be more.
But there could be more. Could do better. So let's go back to what you were talking about before.
Yeah, you have time.
Yeah.
Oh, I was, let's see, back on this previous one. That, you know, the idea of this twist in there is that, the other thing, you know, by the way, I didn't even mention this yesterday, but here, all right, we're gonna talk for 1 minute here before we jump this, let me pause it. There's a professor at University of Illinois Chicago, Jerry Graff, who has a book called They Say, I Say, and it's sold 1.5 million copies. It's a textbook used in all the comparative literature and
Really? They Say, I
rhetorics.
Say.
They Say, I Say. And you know what, in the future, I should have thought of you guys, in the future, I think I'm gonna start including it in this whole packet here, a copy of that book. And it's not a great read or anything, but it's really the same basic thing, which is templates for argumentation. And so they're training all of these students now at the undergraduate level in how to put your arguments together using these, and he has 25 or so templates in there. It's co-authored with his wife, she's the expert on templates. But it's that basic idea of they say, I say. And this, and by the way, this is what I think one of my recommendations is going to be for your story, which is trying to set up your institute in terms of they say, I say, all these other people do this other sort of stuff. What we do is this. So it's that contrast that generates into the narrative world that lights a fire inside of people, that draws them in more deeply. And that's what I was saying, is that I think the way you viewed that abstract was that you were already convinced that this is interesting or important work to be done, and then you want to know, is it laid out clearly? And yeah, it's nicely laid out clearly. But the idea here is to kind of work from square one for people who have no connection to this thing, and they're trying to decide, is this even worth doing? And that's where you get this contrast, lights the fire inside, and they're like, wow, that really is important. So that's the thinking there. Okay. Continuing. That makes sense.
Yeah, I guess for number 4, I just wanted more story. I wanted more story.
Yeah.
Which is good. I guess it's a sign of something good, right? 'Cause you're
Yeah.
trying to continue the.
Well, and then you guys are the creative writers, and so your mind is reaching even further. You know, like I'd really like this to go here and there. And you're right, the style elements are a little light on it. There could be some really powerful words used to tell the same story that would light more of a fire inside of you.
Right, even in the same structure with just 2 sentences,
Yes.
you can.
Yeah, you can do something
Abstract
more.
5.
5. I give a 6.
Instead of 1.
I give it a 5.
I give it a 5.
So.
So I have the highest.
Yeah.
Give us
I think it had
Great.
all the AAAs and the B, you know, so it laid out the fact of his life that he's not having a good day. That I didn't get to a T because I didn't know what the T is. So, but I guess it could work out to a T, but that's why I give it a 6. It's not perfect, but it's not terrible, I guess. It's still better than what's my lowest score, first one.
Yes, I just didn't even see a B or a T. It just seemed sort of AAA, and then just throwing in his buddy who's also hates his job, or just where did that come from? Like,
It seemed like all buts to me.
yeah.
More butts.
But this, 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 a bunch of things. Some of them are related, some of them are not.
Yeah. What is your score? 5?
5.
Okay.
What about you, Kelly?
Yeah, so mine was a 5 as well. I found it straight AAA, and it was just a bunch of facts. You could potentially say not having a good day as well, those facts are supporting, but it's actually his life is not good, so it kind of goes beyond the day.
So what's the difference between the and the but? So I saw a lot of, when I first read it, I thought, oh, it's just and. But then I was reading it and I was like, well, all of these are problems. And if you had some, like Dante Hicks works as a clerk in a small convenience store and is, you know, he has a friend named Randall Graves. If you like put this all together, you could have and then, but today is not a good day because blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
He read this story about his girlfriend in the newspaper and whatever.
Yeah, you could organize an A.
Maybe I was organizing too much, I don't know. Like,
Well, you can say
I was
the
rewriting
A.
as I was reading it, yeah.
Well, you can say the A is Dante thinks life is a series of lines, and this day prove no different. But I think the but is he's having an especially bad day, and then you know. But there's no therefore. I just couldn't find out the therefore.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so that's.
And that's interesting because you say, you know, if you put the but in there, but he reads in the newspaper his ex-girlfriend Caitlin's getting married, the next sentence doesn't even connect to that. His
No, it
present
doesn't.
girlfriend, that's the problem, so there's just no structure at all.
And his buddy
Um,
is not even.
Yeah,
living.
anybody know what?
Right, and then all of a sudden it's buddy.
Anybody know what movie this is? You ever
It's
seen
not
it?
Clerks.
It's a-
That's it.
Yeah, that's what I was like, I know this story.
Yeah, well, and what do you remember from Clerks? It's a movie about kind of nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what you get. And actually, I'm surprised, usually people give this about a 2 or 3 score. So you guys were generous with the 5. Because it is just an and thing. It's just,
Yeah.
and that's what the movie is. And The movie's strong in character, so it was popular and watchable. But if you ask, it was kind of representative of that whole generation that just was ambling around the place, and that's why it was popular. I think it kind of spoke to them. Yeah, the Antiplot, exactly, right.
Although I'm not sure you'd call it part C.
Well, it's actually more the mini plot thing, I think, but.
I haven't seen it, but.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about that. Okay, so, all right, so now it is time to get into, and you can moderate this, but it's story time now.
Oh,
Okay, so we're starting with Sharon's story?
my story.
Yes.
My story.
Yes,
Okay.
Just so to put you guys at ease, this is really not my story. This is MSI's story.
well, and so,
Okay.
and I'll chime in a lot on this discussion, but there's a thing that I tell in that book about the first time that I went to the Centers for Disease Control, when my first book came out, and they invited me to come spend a day with them. And getting ready for that, I did phone calls with 5 of their communications people, and one of them said to me, she said, here's our problem. We go and sit down with the scientists, we ask them, what do you want us to communicate to the public? And invariably they said, we want you to tell the story of the CDC. And then we ask them, what is the story of the CDC? And they say, it's all the diseases we cure here, it's all the drugs we discover, it's all the awards we win, it's the amazing people. And we say back to them, that's not a story, that's a resume. That's a list of accomplishments, and it's an and basically, it's non-narrative. And the story begins when something happens. So that's my first take on this, which is that this is a list of accomplishments and things like that and attributes. But can you mold it into a story? Can we tell something about, and there's several different ways you can do that. First off, you could do the historical, narrative of it. This is in the beginning, there was a need for this, that, and the other thing. But then people realized we need this and this and this. Therefore, we came together and created this institute. That's one direction you go. Or you could do the they say, which is molecular engineering is studied around the world in this sort of way, but no one's ever pulled together an institute that has these sorts of attributes. And here at this place, we've decided to do this. Those are the ways to seek a narrative in the material. And
If you get away from this strip, I mean, I don't know if I'm breaking your sequence here. The real story of this building is they're putting 2 completely irrelevant pieces of science in one building, in my opinion.
Right, it's 2 stories,
Yeah,
not
okay.
one. So if you started with the molecular engineering story of, this is something new, putting all these disciplines together, you forget about the PSD. So it's,
Okay, well, let's work on that, and we will jump the script here a little bit in terms of the queuing,
Yeah.
because we've
So-
got this general thing, and what we're wanting to do here is brainstorm a little bit using these tools in terms of this thing, and at least consider the possibility of something completely different from this. Basically, you've got the and here.
Yeah.
And it's the nice and.
I'm trying to put a little bit, but I changed
Yeah,
it.
so let me.
I said it's not the collection of different laboratories, there is a link.
Okay, wait a second, before we get to that. So, in my new book, I have a section called and, not that there's anything wrong with it. So, and that thing I told you yesterday about the Sea Level Rise Conference, they were set to do an and event, and it would have been great, and it would have been super accurate, people would have walked away with some stuff. It's just that can you find a compelling narrative story that pulls us in deeper and makes us really go, wow, that's amazing. And lets us walk away with a story that we can tell other people, because that's the thing, a well-structured narrative, people memorize it instantly, it sticks in their brain, they can repeat it elsewhere, and the information retains fidelity, they don't get it all jumbled up. When you give people a whole list of facts, then they go away and it's all mixed up. You give them a tight narrative, the story that they repeat, it's like the telephone game, If you whisper to everybody around the circle and it's got a tight structure like that, it'll come back, almost the same thing. So that's what we're brainstorming on here. And let me say the next thing, which is the ultimate power in narrative is in the singular narrative. And every element that you add on to a narrative starts to water it down. And so that's the challenge is, can you distill it down into a singular narrative? And what you're saying right now is no, there's 2 things. But is there any way to find a singular unifying thing? Because the more you can get singularity, the more powerful it is, the more everybody can lock onto that one thing. And this is such an overarching, overriding rule of narrative that you lose audience when you break it, and that's all you can say. And so in film school with our screenwriting, they're constantly saying, whose story is this? And somebody write a story about 5 kids that go on a camping trip. And then, I know, but one of those 5 kids is, it's that person's story that we're hearing this from. We'll just keep going throughout these things right now. So that's the question, is can you find a singular narrative in this? And let's go back then to the word, which is, if you had to pull out one word that all this stuff is about, what would that word? I can toss out a few words, but can you think of one word that encapsulates the whole shooting match?
Well, I think there one word, sort of two word or one word. Either you call it a cutting edge.
That's what I saw in there exactly as one.
Okay, so you can say cutting edge, whether you're going out space or going down to the molecular level, it's
Yep.
cutting edge.
Right.
Or there's another one phrase that keeps coming up, which is, transcending the boundaries. No boundaries, no boundaries, no boundaries. Goes
Okay,
out to
right.
infinity, come down to the no boundaries.
I find that one more interesting than cutting edge. Everybody wants to say they're cutting edge.
Yeah, so when we try to come up with one phrase.
Okay, wait. So, let's just think about just that one word, boundaries. That's
Yeah.
very cool. That's
Yeah.
novel, that's different, that's
Yeah.
kind of attention grabbing.
Yeah.
And what if you were able to somehow start and say, this place is about boundaries and the fact that we don't respect them, or we don't, I don't want to say that, but.
Exactly.
But yeah, that we, I don't know, you gotta be careful with the language of violating people's personal space boundaries and things like that. But,
But this is about scientific discovery without boundary.
yeah, but that word is almost a little charged in some regards, boundaries, because of the, the social context of it. Is there another word that means the same sort of thing? Limitations.
Limitless, I think limitless does.
Yeah,
It's a little flat.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
One of the words that came to mind, although it's not really in here, but it's a word that we use constantly at the IME, is collaboration.
Uh-huh.
The sense of this interdisciplinary collaboration.
Yeah.
It's
How
not
about
as
convergence?
Oh, no, see, convergence is more interesting. Collaboration gets used by, everybody likes to think they're collaborative.
Right.
And that's why, and I was gonna say innovative is another thing, but everybody says they're innovative. And so some of these words are so watered down that they don't really have much strength to them.
Convergence is interesting.
Convergence is really interesting. That's, a word like that requires then you give a little explanation of what it means, this context, but it's a different sort of word. And what do you mean by convergence?
By coming together, in my mind, is coming together, all different sorts of science, different people, different sizes, one of the context of different things coming together
Yeah.
called convergence.
That's kind of a cool word, convergence.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the ABT then. So we've got a candidate for the word. And so, was it BIS had the ABT?
Yeah.
Okay, you
You're in
guys haven't-
charge now.
You guys haven't had any time really to work on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually you've gotten this a day or two in advance.
No, you
So-
did, you did
Oh,
get it.
did you come up with an ABT for it?
I don't know, I was supposed to, but.
That's what I'm saying, is this is the first session, so
Yeah.
in the future, you'll have advanced time with the story. So as a result, we're just working on this all together for this session here.
But I think, but just from,
No, go ahead, Liz.
just from reading it now, what comes out to me is that basically, basically what we're saying is IME and PSD have very distinct visions, but where was
They're
that?
coming into one building.
Convergent.
But they're both inspired by, they both seek to explore and understand great mysteries of our universe, therefore, essentially it makes sense for them to be housed in the same building. It's sort of,
So the sentence I thought was really interesting, I agree with you, but is after that where it says the building is inspired to be more than just a collection of laboratories. So if we were starting with one or two sentences of, here's the building, and then it's inspired to be more than just a collection of laboratories, it could be, it's the convergence of whatever the rest of the sentence is, right? So that's the sort of but.
Can you take a shot at a ABT?
So if you started with the University of Chicago's Eckhart Research Center as a nexus for extraordinary science and technology, bringing together a broad spectrum of research endeavors and aspirations in the Institute for Molecular Engineering and the Physical Science Division's Astronomy, Astrophysics, and Cosmology research. However, the building is inspired to be more than just a collection of laboratories. It's a convergence of
Okay, so what if we flip the script here and not begin with the names of the programs, use that as the punchline at the end, so that we begin with our broad world context, which is innovative research requires certain attributes. Groups need to come together, but quite often this doesn't happen because of this and that. Therefore, at University of Chicago, in these two institutes, we've managed to do something like that. That sort of progression.
Oh, okay, so there's an opening that's and, but, therefore, and then continues the story.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Okay.
and that's what we
Okay.
were saying with these research abstracts as well. So the ABT sets you off on the journey in a clear way in which we understand what we're going after. So it's set up the world that we live in, it's set up the problem that we're going to try and solve, and the therefore is the consequence. We're now headed off on this journey here, and then it's methods and results. And so if you were thinking in those terms, which is the world in which we live that, you know, has this problem that nobody's taking this sort of approach, but nobody's taking this approach, well, therefore these institutes have come together to do this approach. Now, sorry, you've been.
Yeah, no, I
Transition.
was just trying to like work through this. And
Yeah.
So could we say something like, because I'm just keying off these words, so like
Yeah.
and, so like science itself, this building is bringing together multidiscipline,
So work
a
that,
convergence of.
sure,
of that.
work that into an ABT.
And although there's two different disciplines,
So work that into ABT. So start off with, you know, science is at its very best when this and this can happen.
when there's a convergence of ideas.
There, something like that.
So the science is, well, let's say the science cutting edge is overused. The best science happens when there is creativities or.
Exactly. So pause for a second.
Ideas.
See what we're already pushing you towards is what you've got here in the end mode is you've started right off with your subject. You know, this is our program, this is what we do, this is what we do, this do. What I'm pushing you towards is posing this world of science. Starts off in the broadest of all contexts.
Right.
And that hooks our interests. You know, gives us an understanding of why this is an important place. And then it, also think of it in terms of the, you know, the structure of a joke's the same basic thing. Setup, twist, and punchline. So your setup is this, the twist is the way you're doing it differently, the punchline is these are our programs that are actually doing what we've set up as the problem.
So if I take a stab at that, the best thing without we can fill in the detail is to say science works at its best when ideas coming together, you know, out of your
Yes.
knowledge, so
Yes.
whatever. But the current challenge science faces, they are so disciplinary, they're siloed, right?
Excellent, yes.
And then to break down these traditional,
Yeah, that's enough right there.
Right.
So what you just said, that first thing, but the problem that happens in the world of science is this siloing effect, whatever you want to call it.
right,
Which needs to be overcome. Therefore, here with this program, we're doing this, that, and the other thing.
right.
That's a really simple, good, and try and keep these things fairly simple. You know, that's the problem, you start throwing in all these extra things and then we can't follow the logic anymore. The more we can follow the simple logic of which you just hit on it there. Science is at its best when it does this, but it falls apart because of this phenomenon of siloing, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Therefore, we've taken that on with this new program and we're doing it, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
because let's, you know, put away
See-
this ABT thing, just to think of it, the scientists hosting this building otherwise would never talk to each other because there are
Yeah.
astroscientists who looks out to the universe, and then there are material scientists, molecular material scientists who looks at atoms and electrons.
Mhm.
They don't have any reason to talk to each other normally.
Yeah.
But, you know, this building, put
Yes.
them together, they cross passes, hit each other on the coffee pots, you know, that's how the ideas
Sure.
generate. So it's actually when we were even brainstorming with the museum people, everybody kind of just light up when they thought about, oh, that's really cool, you know, because this first of all, the dimension aspect of from the tiniest to the infinity. That's
Yeah.
actually a word that they're trying to bring into this,
Mhm.
from the tiniest to the infinity. Then the scientists coming together, convergence again, to usually never cross.
But my answer to the tiniest to the infinity is why, you know, so what? Why is that really significant? What's the narrative? That's a style element. That's really cool that it's also ours, but the next thing it says is sort of, so what?
Can I
Yeah.
tell you why
Yeah.
that's important?
Yes.
Because every single non-science person, when I talk about the Eckert building, they get it when you say it's astrophysics, like the biggest mysteries of the universe, and then super small. They get it. It's something they grasp. They think it's cool. They think the way the building is ordered with like the astrophysics up at the top and the tiny stuff in the basement, they think it's cool. I mean, it's something that grabs the imagination and is concrete. And I think even the science itself, I mean, if you go to the beginning of the universe, you're back at the atom level anyway. So it just is a big circle, right? So in other words, it's important. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's a message that the general public kind of gets.
Yeah, yeah. But can we find a deeper element in why that's significant, to have that sort of structuring and ordering?
Well, the significance comes from the convergence of ideas and people. And it's actually, there is another element here. It says at the heart of this building are its people.
Yeah.
So when that sentence I added, it's not just a collection of laboratories. I try to emphasize the space for collaboration, for collision of the ideas.
So
Collision
wait a
with the
second,
people.
let me toss out another word, which is commonality. The idea that there's a commonality among all these different types. You may think that an astrophysicist is completely different from this molecular person, but actually there's a commonality, that they've all got something in common, and that's what we're drawing on with this
Yeah,
thing.
that's the
So,
passion for
Yeah.
discovery.
Yeah,
Passion for learn about this mystery of the universe and how to make this world work even better. So that's the commonality, doesn't matter you're looking out of
Yes.
space or looking in electrons, right?
Right.
So,
but
So
what
how
I'm
do you-
saying is if there's a way to frame it as problem solution, that draws people in, because it gets them wondering about, how would you solve this? And then if you can offer up, we've come up with this unique way or solution for it.
right.
Um,
So the coolness wouldn't get lost, what
Yeah.
Carol mentioned, is still there, but the real thing, then everybody said, how can nobody else thought about that? That thing, it's cool, of course. But the question really is, normally they're not in the same building, is because this disciplinary things. They're different organizationally, they're different department, they're different school, so that's why they're not in the same building, right?
Right.
So the building itself represents this new kind of science,
So
the new world
breaking-
of things coming
Breaking
together.
out the boxes.
Okay, more on that, new kind of science.
Well, it's a new way of looking at science instead of, like Sharon was saying, silos. The building itself now represents this new 21st century science where everyone's talking together and collaborating together and coming up with new ideas because they're rushing.
And I think that's significant, just as we talk about it, because it's connected to GCIS, which is primarily biology. So you're connecting all the sciences together with
So-
the architecture.
Yeah, Melody and Jeff's groups in that same building.
So this is getting back to this they say, I say template, which is, can you tell us the world as it's been in the past? They say, in the past, science does this, and this. We say, there's a new way of doing science, which is what we're doing here. And again, that's the structure of the they say, I say, which is the same thing as and, but, and therefore. But it's beginning with this exposition of telling us what's the previous world that didn't work as well as we'd hoped. What's the new way we're doing it here? And it's making that contrast that becomes really powerful. That gives people the narrative to walk away. And it's very cool, this thing of the different floors and that sort of stuff. But those are still elements of style, that they're catchy, but that combined with a deeper narrative of people being able to argue the logic of what's going on there, is they've thought through a way to break through and come up with a whole new way to do science. And that's exciting.
Because when the style reflects the substance.
That's it, that's
But
exactly.
if you look
that's
at,
exactly
forget
right.
about this
Yes.
narrative, let's look at the identity statement, which is really what important, because it's going to be carved onto a plaque and put it in the building. So this is where we really want to forget about all these. So let's look at the identity statement, whether do we have ABT in it. So if you read option 1, from the atom to infinity, the Eckert Center, blah, 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 is the gateway to realm of our universe that we cannot see. Its vision transcends the boundaries, it's in there, of scientific disciplines, explores the mystery and the laws of nature, apply them to the needs of the century. So there are two ideas I think people like Deans really want to bring out. One is transcending the boundary, which is in here. The other one is not just explore the mystery, but also applying them to the needs. So that's why these sentences are here. And, so the other things are more sort of fancy because they're small and big, and then the see and the not see. Those are the two very visionary things museum people think people can get it, from small to big, and then too big you cannot see, and the too small you cannot see. So science help people to see the unseen, you know. So those are the two things, they are in this statement. Maybe we can craft a good ABT identity statement. That would be really.
Because this does not have ABT.
No, it doesn't, but
Right.
I'm saying, but the elements are
There's
in there,
some
we
ideas,
needed
right.
to change
Yeah.
it. This
Well,
is trying to lead
what
to
you were
that.
saying a minute or so ago about substance versus style.
Yeah.
And so the atom from atom to infinity, that's a wonderful element of style.
Uh-huh.
Can we come up with some substance that this works in with that makes it even more powerful?
And then the other challenge is that this statement cannot be too long, because it's going to
Yeah.
be just a couple sentences on the plaque, and you cannot have a paragraph. But so, I mean, I just want to point out, so if we can use our ABT methodology to clean up this baby, get a statement that has the ABT structure, people can leave the building, remembers everything, then let's go.
Which we make in the basement.
Yeah, that's true,
Yeah.
diamond, we make diamond. Basement.
And you know, who knows for this thing, like you're saying on a plaque, maybe you want the plaque to just be a statement, just an and thing or something like that.
Yeah.
Because you're asking more people to dig into a narrative. So it's not guaranteed that that's the place that you want the narrative. But on the other hand, you know, that's your ultimate goal, is to tell the story of what's
Yeah,
going
Carol
on here.
needs a story.
Yeah,
yeah.
what's the story of what's going
Or
on
she's
here?
gonna have to sell the building space.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so
Atom by atom.
Atom by atom.
And so at the core of what the story is the they say, I say.
Yeah.
And think about yesterday, I showed you that Watson and Crick paper on the discovery of the structured DNA. That was total they say, I say. You know, these other people have said it's built this way, but we see problems in our opinion. We say this is how it is.
Yeah.
So the more you can set things up like that, and you don't have to be specific in terms of who they say is and who's gotten it wrong in the past, but that's the way you get a compelling narrative, is to lay it out that they say, what's different? I mean, that's what everybody wants to know, what's different in what you're doing here? You know,
Yeah.
can you quickly tell me what's different? Why is this unique? Because, you know, when I read this, it doesn't really stand out as that unique. I mean, I've seen this in 100 different museums and things like that. We exploring the universe and it's exciting and it's this and it's that. Can you give us the narrative of the brand identity, basically? How does this brand here distinguish itself from all the others?
It seems like from the atom to infinity should be the end.
Yeah,
To me,
yeah.
And there should be
No, that-
another sentence that gives you a ABT in a very kind of
Yeah.
like the abstract example that we had, abstract 4, whichever one it was, where it's like, you want more. So you want to learn more about the building. They should leave wanting to know more or come in wanting to know more.
Right.
Yeah, imagine if that was the punchline, the atom to
Right.
infinity, right at the end.
Right.
And the way we do this, studying this.
So the problem is traditional science discipline. The solution is pushing them out of that discipline, converged into, and also this encounter cannot be forced. It has to be created, that's why I put it in here.
Imagine if you began with our universe is infinitely complex in ways that we can't even see.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that. So you're beginning with a statement of the problem.
Mhm.
But through the bringing together of yada, 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 we can overcome this challenge. Therefore, we've created this program that studies, pulls together disciplines from the atom to infinity.
To make the universe, unseen part of the universe seen.
Yeah. I mean,
That's the
once
therefore,
again,
right?
yeah, you want your program to be the answer.
Yeah.
Not just the statement at the beginning. If you can make it the answer, I think that's very powerful. So that we cannot see. There's conflict in that right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
There's your source of your problems right there.
Mhm.
So it's not like this is a total and statement. It's got, a little bit of
But there.
conflict
Yeah,
right there.
there's a little but there.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying our universe, well, so the state end is universe is complex and you cannot see everything. And human nature or desire is to see everything. So that's the end, right? So, but, well, I guess.
No, I think the but is exactly.
But is university cannot be seen.
Yeah, it can't be seen, exactly. That's, you've got it right in there.
Human has the infinite curiosity to learn about our universe, but the universe cannot be always seen. So the science in this building, if they do it in the converging way, can make the unseen universe sing, or something like that. So that's sort of.
Right, but then also add that the molecular engineering part is the applied science to solve world's
Right,
problems.
and then we have to work into the applied, and not only we wanted to see, but
So
we
you could
also
say
want to use it.
invisible components, invisible results, right? Because you're curing a person,
Mhm.
but you can't see what's curing them.
Yeah. That, well, so you can make it a thing, and then you can make it, make our world better, or universe better, or
Right.
something like that. So the engineering component has to come out, because make it a unseen thing is only science.
Right.
So the technology,
And it's
engineering
using it
is to
for-
use it.
For the,
Okay, that's probably enough on that for
Okay.
now. And are we making sense? Does it seem like?
Does everybody feel better about this story now?
Or is
So we
this-
just have to work it through, right? But we got the
Are we
elements.
making
of it.
reverse progress? Going backwards? Yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
Do we confuse you even more, Novia?
No, I'm not confused. I just, it seems like a lot to get into two sentences that are gonna go on a flag in the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And-
But
but that's the
And-
deconstructive part of it.
that's,
And it's two departments that are by happenstance in the same building,
Okay.
that we're making into a story that makes sense.
but you know, I would encourage
To
you
be
to
really
try and
honest.
let go of that happenstance element, you know? Just look for some story you can come up with that you can convince everybody that they're here by design, or something like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm just
Yeah,
saying it's
that's-
hard to
Yeah,
Back engineer.
mesh. Yes, to back engineer it,
Yeah.
to mesh it
yeah,
together.
but.
And they're very,
But no, but I think even in your ideation process here, you need to shut down that piece of information, because that'll continually be a stumbling block for you to try and come up with something. Because it's in your interest, if you can come up with a unifying story of, you know, the reason we're all here together, and it's not just happenstance that, you know, there's a vision, I don't know, that's kind of salesmanship, but it's about coming up with that narrative, because it's the kind of thing that can be self-fulfilling. If you start telling people, they'll start to buy into it. You're right, you know, we are here by design or something.
So what's the process? So once we now talked this out, we can each go back and then we can work our own way to say, let's do a paragraph on this. So what do we
The
each come up?
first thing to tell you is, you know, this stuff gets frustrating, but if you don't push yourself, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, is that, and a lot of times, I mean, in my first book, I tell about my movie Flock of Dodos, that we shot the whole thing, I put it together, and basically had an end-to-end movie, and for 6 weeks we worked on it, and my crew hated it. And I kept telling them, you know, you're so negative, look at all the great aspects of this thing. And then finally, we had a meltdown, and then I cracked the nut, found an ABT basically, recut the whole thing, and instantly overnight, magically, it became a fun story for everybody to watch, and it, you know, ended up on Showtime. But the idea of looking back at the end of that journey to back in those 6 weeks, when I was convinced that what I had was perfect, you know, it was good enough. And I was angry with my crew that they kept, you know, just being blunt about it, saying, this is boring, and I know it's not. And so that's how tough the journey is that, you know, I don't know where you stop. It's the same thing they say that some famous novelist said, a novel's never finished, it's just abandoned. So there is no end point on these things, and it's the same thing with story development. So all I'm doing here is trying to push you guys to probe and think, because as I say, you've got a narrative element in there, in this one phrase there, in the realms of our universe that we cannot see. You know, why would you put something negative in this identity statement? Because it's got a little bit of power there. And that's the thing, is that it's not about just always being positive. You can do that, but that becomes platitudes and people just get numb to it. That's the power of using the negativity of narrative delicately in just the right place to pull people in and to not, you know, offend them or whatever.
Yeah.
So I see it already right there with that, and I think it's just a group exercise of continuing to push further to see if you can find this. Yeah.
I have two questions. One, should, at the end of an hour, should we have like rewritten, I guess that's maybe why I'm looking frustrated, is because I like to have a product.
Yeah.
because I have this frustration with my husband also. He likes the process, I like the end product.
Yeah.
So are we supposed to, at the end of an hour, sort of have a sort of like, okay, this is kind of a draft of what we're going to do?
No, you should be walking away at the end of the hour with a bunch of ideas to revise this for.
Oh, it's still my story.
Got it.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. So you'll get another shot at this.
Oh, the second time around, got it,
Oh,
okay.
I was
Okay.
And then
hoping
second
somebody
time-
else can write this.
Yeah, so the second time around, we hope that you've got a whole new shot at this thing, and then also that you've also worked on a fiction.
Oh, okay, so that makes it much
Yeah,
less
that's
frustrating for
in the
me,
whole
okay.
booklet thing laid out like that, so that's the
Okay,
logic.
okay,
Yeah.
And then my second question was, so in just looking at these, you know, you were talking about the first one, the gateway realms for a universe that we cannot see, and I'm wondering, so I find making the invisible visible more compelling as a reader,
Mhm.
because it seems like you're proposing a problem and a solution at the same time.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you guys
I
agree?
agree.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, once again,
But I guess that's more style than anything.
yeah, I honestly think that you can open this thing with a phrase that sets the problem out, you know, sort of, or sets up the world and is broader like that. And so, what were you just saying there about so much of science you can't see? That's kind of cool. I mean, what's the chance that this is the Institute of Science that you can't see? Does it fit that definition?
Oh, yeah,
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 it
it's
does.
molecular, you can see.
That's kind of a catchy little,
And the
you
astro,
know,
which you also can't see.
Yeah, astronaut, you can
right.
see.
that's kind of a catchy little nickname, something along those lines.
Yeah.
We're the Institute of Science you can't see. I've never heard that before. Kind of fires up the
We're
imagination.
invisible institute.
The unseen science.
Yeah, those are kind of broad, simple, relatable themes for the public. Have you fiddled around with that sort of
No, we
messaging?
haven't, that's a good one.
That's worth thinking about, you know?
Maybe we have the tagline, we're invisible.
Yeah, well, see, I think invisible is a little, gets
Yeah,
a
I get
little
you right.
strange, but
Unseen
but I think the Institute of Science you can't see lays it out very clearly, and that's kind of intriguing. Instantly, I want to know, what do you mean by that? You
Yeah.
know, what kind of science can't I see? That's kind of cool.
Okay.
I would encourage you to pursue that
All right.
as a thought, the Institute of Science you can't see.
Maybe unseen, maybe hiding. Sorry, just.
No, that, I mean, think about the depth of that phrase, because seeing is believing.
Yeah,
There's a lot to that. you
maybe
know.
we should say seeing is breathing, but with
I don't know
our
what you wanna
science,
say.
you cannot see.
No, I don't think you want to say that.
That's a
but-
but.
I don't think you want to say that, but I think you want to think about how deep that is as a basic
Yeah.
piece of common sense, which is seeing is believing. You've got a whole institute here where we can't see anything. How can we believe you do even do any science?
Exactly, when they tour through our laboratory, you see nothing. You cannot see it. True.
There's a lot you can work with there that could be really fun and true, basically. You know, that's the
So
constraints.
Carolyn is going to advertise visit a unseen world. And I was like, oh, that's like a Carolyn Halloween type of thing. I'm just kidding.
So, and again, this is just me blabbering, and I may be way off the mark, but the unseen world and the invisible world, it doesn't do that much for me, but the Institute of Science you can't see somehow. There's a narrative strength, there's a contradictory power in that. Why can't I see it? Where I want to know more about the
The science
explanations.
science is about seeing, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
about knowing, about
Well,
measuring.
at a deeper level, it's this basic instinct of seeing is believing. And
Yeah, got it. Okay, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay,
So let's
let's
move
see,
on to the second story.
last little thing I want to say, and I think we're at the end, yeah. So we're
Do we
basically,
get on Novia's story at all?
yeah, no, that's the next hour.
Oh,
So,
that's the next hour.
Yeah, we're gonna go right in.
I
And I was thinking, isn't Claire
Claire
coming
coming
back?
back in 5 minutes.
Okay, so we'll take a break for 5 minutes, but before we take that break, just 1 second, which is just another little thing to guide you. Think about also trying to write a narrative of the history of the program. And as I was saying, look at that story cycle, the video that I showed, the 12 points are laid out in the book there, and see if by any chance your narrative of the creation of this place matches that.
Sure.
The IME has
It does.
dark hours.
It does?
I mean, I can imagine already.
You can
Yeah, it
imagine,
does, yeah.
and so I like to tell people, you know, the starting point for getting into a really good story like that is the darkest hour.
Yeah.
And if you've got a really cool, interesting, dramatic darkest hour, That's what pulls us in. I did this a year ago with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. They have a research institute that they brought me up there to work with their group. They were doing their first public exhibit, and they've been around for 27 years. And they had all their stuff was just all, we did this, we did this. Well, it turned out there was a great darkest hour, which was 4 years in. They were accomplishing nothing, and the David Packard was spending all this money on all this underwater exploration gear. And then somebody found evidence of this Zeppelin that went down in 1933 near Big Sur, and there were 4 biplanes that were with it. And the people knew that this thing had gone down off the coast there, but no one had ever found it. And so all of a sudden they had, evidence to suggest it might be this place. So there was one day where David Packard decided to roll the dice. He called all the billionaires in that he'd been drawing money for him to support this thing to his big mansion. They hooked up the remote video cameras that was all brand new technologies in 1992, I think. And they had the scientists out there, and they sent these ROVs down there, and they spent the whole day looking around. They didn't find anything, and this guy said, if you guys don't come through for me, I'm pulling the plug on the whole institute. And by late afternoon, like, everybody was in depression, and then all of a sudden they found this debris field, and they start following it, and the thing comes up over this ridge, and boom, there's 2 of these biplanes sitting down there completely intact. And the story's really powerful, but it's powerful because of that darkest hour, that moment where, the guy, and so we were interviewing all these people there, and everything was kind of routine and dull, and then one guy came in and told that whole story, and then I just turned to all the video crew, this is the gold here, this is a great story. So that's what you want, is if you've got something like that at darkest hour, people can relate to that, pulls them in, like, wow, there was a dream here, and it wasn't working, but then this thing happened, and then it started to come back up. So do you say you feel like there's some of those elements?
I think that's a little bit, maybe it's a different aspect of it, because I'm looking at your heroes.
Well, that's the same thing that came up at their place, which was, we're not sure we want to share this with the public, but that's something to be thought through further. Is there a way to share any of these?
I think our darkest hour is mostly political between the 2 departments,
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
why I think it was hard to get the
Yep.
building together, but I don't think we can actually.
Yeah, well, these are the challenges you face in the world of science, which is science people don't want to be ever humanized. And
Right.
so, but then do they want to be interesting or not? And so will they be willing to share a few of those things? I don't know, that's a challenge.
But it's interesting because it's all working for humankind, so.
That's right.
So it's,
Yeah,
I mean.
exactly. And by the way, here's one interesting twist on that is in my new book, which is that I try and tell people, so the flawed protagonist, is at the core of the logline maker, but it goes back ages, and if you search that on Wikipedia, it gives you pages of stuff of all the great movies, there's always a flaw in the protagonist. Scientists don't want to admit they've got any flaws. But here's the crazy part is when you've been a scientist for 20 years as I was, you wouldn't believe how many talks revolved around the scientist making a mistake. And the very best scientists love to tell the story about, we set up the experiment here, we had all the little beakers here, and then one day we realized this beaker is next to the window, and the window, is getting chilled by that. And oh my God, as soon as we moved it away from the window, it fixed the whole experiment, and then boom. Everybody loves that story. Nobody thinks the scientist was an idiot. So they're willing in certain contexts to use the flawed protagonist, very narrative dynamic, to tell a good story. And I've seen some of those talks that that's the best talk I've ever heard. So that's the weird little thing, is they don't want to concede they have any flaws, and yet they will use them in that context of how we were doing the experiment wrong, and then we figured it out one day. So there is a way to work within their constraints, but it's delicate.
So I think, the other thing we need to be mindful is thinking about Institute for Molecular Engineering. I'm trying to use your 12 elements of that story
Yeah.
cycle, trying to think, okay, the hero starts at ordinary world, depending on who the hero is, of course. The Institute of Molecular Engineering starts in a very special world. There's no ordinary world for Institute of Molecular Engineering. It was a special child. It was.
Oh, wait, you're confusing the language here.
I don't think that's true,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're confusing the word special and ordinary with the Joseph Campbell definitions.
Okay.
So you need to be thinking those in Joseph Campbell, which is things were being done this way, but then something changed, brings in the special world, and a source of tension or conflict was established.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't, because this actually happened to me last year in a talk that I gave where I ended by saying, I used to be in this ordinary world of being a tenured professor, but then I moved to Hollywood, which was an exciting special world, but you can never be comfortable there. And tonight I'm here back at my old
So
science
that's why
organization.
the science people says it's, you're ordinary. No,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think how you wanted to figure out our darkest moment. I mean, there were many challenges,
Mhm.
but I don't know if there is a unified darkest moment.
Well, but
You know, so-
you can present those challenges in a way that have got dramatic potential to them, which was everybody had good intentions, but we could feel that this thing was gonna slip away from us if we couldn't solve this problem. And nobody wanted it to slip away, but the very best minds trying to come together couldn't quite solve it. But as long as you've got the resolution to it, but then one day we solved it finally, then nobody mind. The only problem is if you just say, and it turned out we never solved it because they're all such idiots, then that's when they have a problem with that.
But that's the darkest moment.
Truly dark moment. So yeah, we don't mind the darkest moment if you come out of it.
I mean, I've only been here
If we
for.
don't, we never hear about the
You
darkest.
never hear about it. Those are the stories that don't get told. Right?
There's some dark moment already.
No, I haven't had a dark moment. I don't know if it's a dark moment, but like,
Yeah.
I think that the challenges are actually, we're in them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we're
Because
in
the IME started and they got, it was, the ordinary world was that, everybody was really excited about it, all the people came together and they, hired sort of the founding faculty and the administration, and as we grow, it becomes more difficult because
Yeah,
now
yeah.
we're trying to figure out, well, who are we? What
Nice.
is our
Nice, this
what
is
is
good.
our identity?
I'm in
What's
the
our
special- I'm in the
what's
special world
what's
now.
our story?
Keep going. We're on a
but-
journey.
But we're still there.
But we're still in.
We haven't
We're
come out.
still
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
We're still on the
yeah,
journey.
We're-
Can you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
yeah.
Yes, but we don't know what the end of the story is.
It's gonna look like, right?
Right.
We're
Yeah.
still
We're so
walking
new.
through
It's
that.
still-
Right.
Can you fudge that a little bit and say that we have reason to believe that we're now on the home stretch?
But I think that's partly what all of this, and we're not moving on yet to the second story here, but
Uh-huh.
I think this,
Well, we're gonna
I
get to
tweaked,
that.
I tweaked it a little bit, but mostly it was what was on the website.
Right.
Purposely wanted that. I think that's what all of the, we're on the forefront, this is because that's where we want to be.
Yeah, right.